Good day, everybody, and welcome. We are excited that you've joined the COPC Achieving Operational Excellence using Six Sigma session. It's great to have so many in attendance. We hope that you and yours are safe and well. My name is James Camerari, Vice President of North American Sales at COPC, and I will serve as today's session host. I'd like to start by introducing two of my colleagues and veteran COPC consultants that will be leading today's event. First, Brent Jernigan, Director of Consulting. He offers 15 years of experience in contact center process improvement while additionally specializing in quality systems and workforce management. And Rick Zayas, Vice President, leading our performance improvement consulting practice. He has 30 years as a customer experience professional. Both Brent and Rick bring many years of experience on the client, the outsourced, and the consultancy side of our industry, and are responsible for leading performance improvement consulting engagements and for the delivery of many of our best practices training classes, which we'll tell you a little bit about later. The three of us are all glad to be here with you today. As some of you may already be familiar with COPC, I'll just take a quick moment to introduce you to our organization. As our chairman and founder, Cliff Moore, is quoted here, we are relentlessly focused on performance improvement for operations that supports the customer's experience, and this is all we do. To expand upon that just a little bit, we are a consulting firm. We've been around since the mid-90s. We developed a performance management system and quality management framework known as the COPC Customer Experience Standard, to which many high-performing organizations follow, are compliant with, and even become certified. In terms of our solutions, we provide customer experience strategy and optimization consulting, which again focuses on performance improvement, strategic sourcing strategy and consulting for vendor management organizations, customer experience and best practices training, and certification. Some of the largest and most successful organizations use us to help them drive performance. Okay, before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. During the session, as you probably have already noticed, attendees will be muted, but we'll be able to submit questions. So see at the bottom of the screen, there's a little Q&A button. You can submit questions as we go. Our 1 hour agenda will include about a 10 to 15 minute session after the presentation in which to field these questions. So again, feel free to submit. And we will close it all out with a short poll for feedback purposes. So we hope that you'll take a few moments just to respond to that. One other point here, and for those of you that have attended some of our other webinars in the series, today's session will be conducted a little differently with more of a conversational style delivery, a bit of a more interaction between me and our presenters today. So, all right, with all of that out of the way and said, I'd like to hand it off to Rick Zayas to get us started. Rick?
Thank you, James, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, talking about this topic about achieving operational excellence using Lean Six Sigma. We've got a poll that we're going to try to launch here at the beginning, just to get some more feedback from you, some more interaction on your background, your exposure in Lean Six Sigma. So I don't know if we've set this up properly or so. James, do you see a way of launching that or not?
Yeah, the poll that I'm seeing is the one for the end, Rick, unfortunately.
Okay, all right. So we may have missed out on that. All right. Well, I wanted to chat with you today about a methodology, a concept that was born clearly in the manufacturing industry. It was designed for the manufacturing industry, and it can be challenging to think about how can something that was designed to work with, I don't know, heavy machinery, and in an environment that is really completely different than the spaces that we operate in from a customer experience perspective, can that really work? And so this can be perplexing at times. It can be a challenge for organizations to try to figure out. We've heard about success with this in the manufacturing realm, and we've come across training programs, and there's just a lot of manufacturing talk, and that's not the talk that we engage in. That's not our setting. That's not our work environment from a customer experience perspective and such. So COPC has taken the time over the years to really translate these tools and concepts that have been used very well in the manufacturing industry with Lean Six Sigma and make them relevant, applicable on a very day-to-day basis to help with your decision-making, to help you achieve just what the title of this webinar is, excellence in your organization and such. So we're gonna chat with you about that here today. Now, why have we seen Lean Six Sigma fail in the customer experience industry? There are several reasons for that, and we actually talk about this a little more deeply in our courses because we want you to understand some of the potential pitfalls of trying to apply this in your organization if you don't come at it, I'm going to say correctly, like with the right understanding of how to apply these tools and such. But we're going to bring up 3 examples here that are a bit more related to what we're going to be talking about today. But one of the things we see is we do see organizations who invest. Organizations want to improve. They want to find ways of fostering continuous improvement. And so they'll spend time learning tools, learning methodologies, and we've seen organizations invest in training their people in the various levels of Lean Six Sigma training. So they've got these colored belts, yellow belt, green belt, black belt, even master black belts. Organizations will hire in a few master black belts or so to kind of help them with that. And these are good ideas, but most people are the way they were trained, the way they were brought up in this methodology is gonna be through training that was based on manufacturing. And that leads to the next challenge here, which is it can be very difficult when you've been taught these tools and concepts based on manufacturing scenarios, manufacturing issues, to try to figure out how do I translate that to my CX world, to my customer experience world, where the services are being provided through digital means, through retailer face-to-face type interactions, through remote support that is done, with our service or support centers or our contact centers and such that handle inquiries from customers through various channels. How do I take this thing that I learned in practice in a manufacturing type setting and apply it to this world? It can be quite challenging to make that translation and to do so effectively and to know which tools work in a service setting and how to make them work most effectively in your environment. The last reason I'll bring up here that we've seen Lean Six Sigma fail in the customer experience industry has been, these initiatives begin with the right thought process, the right purposes in terms of we want to find a way to adopt something that's been proven to work somewhere else and see if we can use it here to better our results, to better our bottom line. But then what we see them turn into many times is this focus on the collection of belts. Like when we will go into an organization, sometimes they'll tell us, oh yeah, we're all about continuous improvement. And when we ask them to tell us more about that, they let us know about how many folks have been trained at various levels. And they've got tens or hundreds of people, depending on the size of the organization, trained in this methodology. But the most important question that needs an answer is, what results have they achieved with all that? Because that's really what we're looking for here. It's not so much how many people have been trained in the methodology. Yes, it's important for you to know these tools and to know how to use these tools. But if you're not finding a way to adapt them to your work setting, to your services, to your processes, and getting real results that impact your bottom line, results that impact the customer experience, then this was really all for naught. And so we do see where it does somehow change along the way, because it's not hard to get people trained, but it is hard to solve some of our more complex and challenging problems that we face on a day-to-day basis in business. So with all that said, do we really need Lean Six Sigma in our customer experience industry? And we would tell you, as James was describing, we've been around going on 30 years, COPC. And we're a global organization. We've conducted thousands of assessments globally. And what we have seen, and we've worked with some pretty impressive brand names, is that when you look into the design of the customer experience, whether again be delivered through human assisted channels or through digital channels, we find that half the time what we're encountering is that these organizations are struggling to meet their KPIs, their own defined KPIs, their own metrics that they have defined to manage and understand the health of their business. We find that they struggle to consistently meet those. They may hit them, some of them most of the time. They may miss some of them most of the time. They may kind of be up and down. They may hit them for 4 or 5 months, and then they have a bad several weeks or a couple of months or so. And so the ability to achieve your own KPIs, your own metrics, which obviously is important to you, we see half of the organizations just struggle to get this done consistently. And so COPC, we would tell you that, yeah, Lean Six Sigma can be very beneficial in the CX industry when you know how to apply it correctly. So kind of with that thought process in mind, we're going to talk about a couple of key challenges. In our brief introductions here that James so kindly gave, what you don't know is that I've spent the bulk of my career not with COPC, although I've been with the company a few times, but I've run operations in different industries. And a couple of things. One, I've seen these frameworks work. I've applied them successfully. And second, I usually, when you look at my history, wherever I worked, I sent people to COPC's training programs because they were top notch. People learned very important and useful skills that could help benefit my business, my operation and such. One of the things that I found in running operations was, what do we do with this unreliable performance? There's always metrics that we really want to be performing at a different level that are just not there. And then the scary thought is, I'm not sure if any of you were able to join us a month ago when we gave our service journey webinar, service journey thinking webinar. And if you weren't able to join then, take a look at our website. I think you got to go through a simple registration process, but you'll find the link there. You'll find some good strategic concepts that are talked about there about things we need to understand in the customer experience industry. Sometimes when we think we're performing well, we're really not. And so that's kind of the dark side of unreliable performance. It's the scary side of unreliable performance. We do know which metrics, at least we can see, that are not hitting. Sometimes when we think we're meeting performance targets, performance requirements, we may be still missing the boat. And we're going to give you some examples of that here today. The other challenge is when we do know we have some performance problems, how do we go about figuring out where to begin to try to fix those, to try to address them, and try to address them and correct them in a way that they are able to sustain that improved performance? That is a challenge in itself, because many of our KPIs are influenced by multiple factors in and outside of our organization. So where do we tweak things? Where do we modify things? Where do we re-engineer things to get the desired result that we want to see, again, in our key metrics and such? So with these two major challenges in mind, we're going to take you through today in this webinar some thought processes of how Lean Six Sigma can assist you in both of these areas, right? So let's start with the unreliable. Yeah.
Rick, before you go, we have fixed the poll, so we could launch that poll now if you'd like.
Yeah.
To give a little bit of, ask the audience to give a little bit of background.
I would love to. Go ahead and launch it, please, James.
Let me launch that for everybody. You should see a poll there. If you just take a quick moment, this will help us as we get through our session today.
Yeah. So what this poll is, everyone, and I'm going to give you like 30 seconds to get it done. It's pretty simple. Is I'd like to get an idea of some of the backgrounds here in terms of your exposure to Lean Six Sigma, what you've seen, what you've experienced, what you heard from your coworker or neighbor, from your client, from a vendor and such. Just give us some indication of kind of what your background is, right? I'll give you like, let's say, got some good replies coming in here. So maybe 10, 15 more seconds. This helps us today kind of have an understanding of how we should talk through some of these examples, but it really gives an indication as well of kind of what we're seeing in the industry too. So I'm going to go ahead and end polling and see if we can share these results. Yep. I'm not sure if this is visible to everyone or not, but that's the intent. It looks like we've got a good mix here. We've got some skeptics. All right, that's great. We love speaking with you. We love kind of getting to know more about what led you to think that way or what led you to feel that way. We've got some practitioners, and we've got a few experts as well, and ready to give their own webinar. So I love seeing that. I'm glad to see those results. This does, again, help us today, give us some perspective. And for those of you that are experts and ready to give your own webinar, you've got my contact information from when you signed up. Shoot me an email at some point and let me know when you're going to do that, because I would love to join. We can all learn from each other, right? We're in this together. So back to the presentation here. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for your participation there. Let's get into that performance gap thing we were talking about and how we can use Lean Six Sigma to help us be more precise about identifying where these challenges exist. So the first example I'm going to get into here has to do with the use of averages in our industry. So we report metrics in different ways in your organization throughout the CX industry. And one of the more common ways that results are reported is in the form of an average. So it's not uncommon for us to say, hey, this is how we're doing with our average cycle time, or here's what our average sales were with that last campaign or with that last promotion, or here's what our average customer satisfaction score has been the last several weeks or several months. It's quite common to report results in the form of an average. And if our average is meeting target, we're feeling pretty good, right? We get a good pat on the back. We move on to the next problem because this is not a problem if we're meeting, if on average we're meeting our performance target. However, I'd like to help you understand today that averages on their own can be deceiving, unintentionally so, but they can be deceiving. It's not enough. And if you are meeting your performance targets on average, I'm also here to tell you today that that's definitely not good enough, and it's clearly not something that we would say is achieving excellence. So I'm gonna take some time here to kind of help you with those concepts, but really you're not doing good enough if you're meeting targets on average.
So hold on, Rick. So you're telling me that if on average I'm meeting my targets, whether it be handle times or service levels or customer sat, that's not good enough. If my average is saying I'm above the goal, it's not good enough.
It's not good enough. Oh, it depends how far above the goal, but we can talk about that in a class setting where we can go through different scenarios and such. And James, thanks for bringing that up, because this is a bit of a shocker at times for people to hear. It's like, wait, what? I'm hitting my target on average, and you're telling me that's not good. It's not good enough. So let me walk you through a couple of slides here, and I think I can shed some light on this topic. All right. So first, we need to understand this concept of distribution. Every process exhibits some distribution in the results and such. As you are processing customer inquiries or orders or handling transactions, again, via digital services or human-assisted services, there's going to be some natural fluctuations in how those things are handled, the results that are achieved through each of those transactions. No matter how controlled or how tight a process is, every process exhibits some level of variation. And as those values, those results built up over time, they form a pattern visually, all right? When you take these statistical results on how you're performing with each of these transactions, and you figure out a way to kind of plot those, to chart those, they form a pattern over time. And the patterns that they form are actually important to understand, and something that we discuss in our Lean Six Sigma courses. There are ways of interpreting those results that help you understand the good and the bad that you can see in those patterns. The other thing that we want to understand from these patterns is how varied are the results? How much variation are we seeing in those results? And this is where we can kind of get a friend to kind of join in and help us understand how we could be misinterpreting performance results when all we understand is the average. So let's go to a real example here. Got a scenario here where we're going to introduce lightly. We don't have a ton of time today here, but we're going to introduce the use of a tool called the histogram, and some of the things that you can get out of that. So we have a scenario here where we have a major medical device company that produces medical devices for personal use, and they're not things that you need to get written a note or a prescription from a doctor to be able to acquire these. And they are innovative. They are quite popular. They knew these were going to be quite popular, but they also knew that they're not for everyone. So people will go try this device, and if it doesn't work out for them, they're likely going to return it. So they had expected a notable level of returns. And so their target was to maintain their product return rate at 18% or less. And as they were, with the launch of this product, this innovative product, as they're gathering data and measuring how they're doing across the many retail establishments that they have been able to meet and beat that target rate on average. So their average return rate is 17%. However, they are not achieving the level of satisfaction that they were hoping to in their satisfaction surveys as well. And so that led them to want to understand, well, what's behind this, this result that we're seeing on a customer satisfaction side when we seem to be achieving what we thought would be the expected return rate for this innovative product. So bring in the use of a power tool in Lean Six Sigma, the histogram. And again, I don't have time to teach you how to build these properly, how to interpret them completely properly, but we're going to touch some concepts here today. This example that's on the screen here gives you some understanding of this thing I just mentioned a moment ago of distribution and how widely the results are distributed. The bars here that are colored in gray are the retail outlets that have been able to meet or stay below that product return rate target. Whereas the ones in blue are those retail establishments where they have a higher than desired product return rate, and in some cases, significantly higher. So some of the first things that we can just pick up visually from looking at this chart is about half of the retail establishments are not within that target product return rate. Why does that matter? It's got a number of different impacts, but clearly from a business perspective, they've got products that are being returned that maybe are not salvageable, so there's cost associated with that from an investment perspective, a product loss perspective. There's also the potential here because on a customer side, clearly something didn't work out for them. Something was not what they thought it would be. You've got some organizations with 2 to 3 times the product return rate. You may have customers so dissatisfied with that one experience that they may choose not to buy again from this major medical device company. That is lost future revenues as well. So this is a big problem that isn't seen when all I understood was I had a 17% product return rate. So that's one thing you can interpret from this. There is another thing that we'll teach you to understand this in our courses and such, but there are some metrics, some statistics that are in that graph as well. There's something there called VSF, variance significant factor. There's another thing there called yield. There's another one there called process sigma. Those numbers, when you understand how to interpret them properly, give us an indication of how capable this process is at meeting our desired performance results, our desired performance levels. And right now, we would say that this process has low capability and thus cannot be fixed by some product important person somewhere at headquarters sending an email to all their regional leaders telling them, hey, we've got to do better with our product returns. They're too high. There's something much more systemic here that needs to be addressed. I think Brent's about to say something.
Yeah, Rick. So I love this graph, and I love the histogram as a tool to kind of help identify what's going on in a population, whether that's agents or in this case it's retail store outlets. But you had mentioned on the previous slide, one of the things we teach in our classes is the fact that these processes result sometimes in data that the shape of the data is slightly different, and that can give you really meaningful insights into what's going on. And with just this simple metric and a measurement of sort of the distribution of the return rates in these different retail outlets, you can already see in this histogram where we have 2 significant peaks in this histogram. That's an indication that we have 2 different ways of operating. And in something like this, where we're dealing with return rates, what that might indicate for an organization is, hey, maybe we have retailers who aren't adhering to the policies or the processes that we have in place that govern sort of when returns are allowable, or where you would accept a return. And so just from one tool and with one metric, we can already begin to identify some potential things that might be impacting us as an organization. So it's one of the reasons why I really love the histogram as a tool for investigating what's going on in the metrics that I'm looking at.
Very much so, very much. Thanks, Brent. And super important to understand that, again, at this point, we're just trying to understand the breadth of the problem. We don't know what's causing it yet, but clearly there's a systemic issue behind this. We don't know what these retail establishments are doing in terms of how they promote the product. Maybe they're trying to sell it in a way that it does more than what it was designed to do in some of these establishments. So you get a lot of disappointment when it doesn't do what they proposed or promoted that it did. Who knows what's causing this? It could be the way it's being stored, and it's causing damage. So when customers bring it home, it's not working. Whatever it might be, there is a significant systemic issue here. And to Brent's point, these 2 peaks are indicative of 2 different ways of getting the job done. So so much we could spend a half hour just talking about this example right here. But there's so much that you can get out of just one of these power tools within Lean Six Sigma.
So guys, if I could, it obviously that looks like really great insights drawn from, like you said, this one Six Sigma tool from the retail world. But as others might be thinking, certainly I am, I don't manage retail outlets, I manage people. So how can I use Six Sigma to improve my team's performance?
Great question, James, and thanks for bringing that forward. I too managed people throughout my career. So how can you take something that was designed for this environment, again, with all these heavy machines, manufacturing, and use it in a way that helps you manage and get more performance out of your teams? I've brought an example of that for today's session as well. And we're going to do the histogram one more time, just so you can see how it can be powerful, even in a setting when we're managing performance of our team members, of our staff and such. So in this example, we have a tech support operation, and they have a target range of when they expect calls to be escalated from tier 1 to tier 2. And there is purposeful design here. There are certain types of issues that they don't train tier 1 to handle, that they need a certain different level of technical knowledge and understanding and background to be able to solve. So not all inquiries, not all issues can be solved by tier 1. They do expect some level to be transferred to tier 2. So they've set up a target, what we call a specification limits. We'll set up a target where they want at least, they expect 5% escalation rate to tier 2, but no higher than 15. Once it gets higher than 15, something's going wrong with the ability to resolve issues properly at that tier 1 level. So they have this target range of 5 to 15, and in this organization, their average performance was at 14%, just under 14%. So they're staying within that target range on an average basis, meeting those tolerances, but they were noticing they have higher than expected cost in terms of resolving these inquiries and kind of the operation of their business. And they were getting complaints from the tier 2 agents that they were seeing things that they shouldn't see coming to their attention that should be resolvable at tier 1. So this led to an effort where they worked with their agents, they went through some coaching routines, and they still were not able to move to kind of move these results, to get the lower cost, to get less complaints from tier 2. So it was time again to bring in a Lean Six Sigma power tool. Here comes our friendly histogram. We were able to visually, and again, and also interpret statistical data with this, but visually with this histogram, looking at the agent population providing the tech support, the target range is shown in that green shaded area. Well, this is after they had already applied their coaching techniques, and you can see that even though on average the target's being met, there are quite a few agents. Each of those bars there represents a population of agents, and the number of agents in each bar is represented by the data value that you see on top of each of those bars. So I haven't done the math here, but it looks like it's at least a third working its way towards a half, but it's at least a third of the population is outside of this target range. Again, some on the low end, which could be a little scary, folks solving things that they weren't trained to solve, which could lead to issues later on with customers, right? And then a lot on the high end, some that are escalating 1 out of every 3 calls to tier 2. So that in itself would show you, hey, we're not providing a consistent customer experience. Depending on who they reach for support, they may get a completely different experience on how their issue is resolved and whether it needs to be escalated or not. So there's a concern there from a customer experience perspective, and clearly there's a concern from a business results perspective, business cost, business efficiency perspective. So this histogram led the organization to do some deeper digging because coaching didn't solve the problem. And in their deeper digging, they were able to identify a couple of systemic issues that by changing those things, they had an impact on the broader results, what they were not able to achieve with the coaching. So in this case, the example on the screen talks about how they recognized they needed to make changes to their training program and also changes to their knowledge base to make it more useful, more up to date, more complete for their agents, a tier 1 to utilize and to utilize effectively. And those process type changes led to a much more impactful performance result in getting more of this agent population closer to the desired target range. And thus, again, with the use of something like a histogram and the visual impact of that and the interpretation of that properly, as well as the understanding of how to interpret the statistical calculations that you should make to support your data analysis, you can get to a better understanding of your problem and thus work your way toward a more proper solution for this.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, Rick. And the thing that I would kind of try to drive home to the audience here is that in our industry, quite often our assumption is it's an agent level problem. And so the end result is, because we operate largely, we're in such a fast-paced industry, we're operating off of these assumptions that it's something that can be corrected by coaching. That's the tool that we try to use to solve every problem. And so as a result, sometimes you take lots and lots of action and put a lot of effort into controlling a metric, and the end result is that you don't actually get the result that you're looking for. And so one of the keys, I think earlier you mentioned some of the ways in which we see Six Sigma fail. Sometimes it fails because we retain that sort of assumption that it's agent level problems that we're looking for, and we don't look at the process level to understand how is the process going wrong. And if you're doing Six Sigma correctly, then you should be approaching things primarily from a process level. Yes, you can use it for agent level problems, but primarily you should be thinking in terms of what's the process like and how is the process itself causing variation that I'm experiencing. And so a tool like this, even at the agent level, to James's question, when we're looking at a population of agents as opposed to stores, we can still use these tools to identify what's sort of going on with the population of agents, and then in thinking about the process level and what's going on in the process, begin to identify likely culprits that we can then go sort of investigate to see what the real process level issue is. Well, that's why it's such a great tool.
Great, good point, Brent. Yes, because it is easy to fall into our habits that even when we learn new tools, we can still jump to, well, I know how to fix this. I'm going to fix it with more coaching or a refresher training or whatever the case might be. When things like this are indicative, they're telling us there's something bigger at stake here that just needs to be changed if we're going to achieve the level of performance that we're seeking as an organization. All right, we're gonna show you another tool here, these various quantitative type tools in Six Sigma. So we have this thing called a box plot, and we won't spend as much time on it as we did the histogram, but we just kind of wanted to give you a glimpse of another example of something that can actually be super helpful in your organization. And there's a right time to use a box plot. And here in this example, we're evaluating the performance of a quality management team. And many of our organizations have quality management teams. They're evaluating the customer transactions that are going on, whether through digital channels or through human-assisted channels. And it's important that we know that they're doing so in a right way, right? So here we have a team with that went through a calibration sessions, and then they're tabulating those results, and they're comparing how their various evaluators perform in those calibrated sessions, those calibration sessions, compared to their gauge, to their expert, who is basically the definition of where the scores should be for those inquiries that they were evaluating. So our gauge is that first box there. We got these bluish boxes with numbers in them, and they've got these lines coming out of them. We call those whiskers, and we can teach you how to interpret all that and understand that properly. But we want more of these evaluators to look a lot more similar to what we see the gauge here is what we're shooting for in this example, in this use of this tool. And you can clearly see visually. So it's one thing to see things in a report and data that's in a bunch of fields in in cells somewhere. It's another thing to be able to have this visual representation of what's going on. Because it just jumps out at you that evaluators 4 and 3 are pretty significantly away from where the gauge is, evaluating the same inquiries, right? The same inquiries that were handled by their CX organization and such. So that in itself is alarming and needs to be addressed. And also the size of that box, kind of the bigger it gets or the longer those whiskers get, they are indicative of more variation in the scoring process. And so you want those to, again, mimic as much as possible what you would see from the gauge and such. And you do see differences there in some of those evaluators and how they're performing. You see somewhat a lot more variation than others. So this type of tool can bring those things to light, and you can switch it from quality and use it to assess performance of your teams that are providing the same types of support. So if you've got multiple tech support teams or multiple sales teams or multiple customer service teams supporting the same products and such, you can also evaluate, are you seeing significant differences in how they're performing compared to where the desired result should be, right? So in this case though, with a quality management team, this is super impactful, even though these folks are operating behind the scenes. A term that we use in service journey thinking is this term called backstage. And when you have inconsistencies going on in the backstage, processes that support the front stage where the interactions, the live interactions are occurring with customers and such, if there's inconsistencies in the backstage, they are linked. They're directly linked to front stage activities and can have a very real impact, therefore, on the customer's experience, as well as in any key business results that you're tracking to. So we do need to find consistency here as well, consistency at meeting whatever the target performance level is in order to generate the results that we need in our business.
So Rick, okay, so it's a bit of a weird looking chart. I've really never seen a chart with whiskers before, but it's an interesting chart. So I think I'm starting to get the picture of how Six Sigma can help me identify where my performance challenges are. Mm-hmm. But with so many of these factors contributing to the results, how do I know where to focus my improvement efforts?
Great question as well. And I know it is a weird looking chart, but there are ways, again, of understanding how to use these charts correctly, how to interpret, again, not just the visual nature of it, but the numbers that are included on here. And again, love to see you in one of our courses so we can help you do that properly in your organization so you can have success. But to your question here, all right, so we've seen different examples of how we can use Lean Six Sigma to help us get a better understanding of the problem at hand, right? How can we use Lean Six Sigma to help us do a better job of pinpointing where to begin focusing our attention? So to try to figure out how to improve. Now I'm looking at the time here, and I know I'm getting close, so I'm gonna have to skip a few slides along the way here, folks. But hopefully you've gotten some good information out of this so far. And again, we can see you in the future in one of our training classes and such. There's this thing called the Kaizen Model that was actually explained in, I think, in our previous quality management webinar by my colleague, Cindy Edwards. So the Kaizen Model was really first used or designed within the marketing industry. But one of the reasons why we teach it in our Six Sigma courses is that we want you to understand, we want you to evaluate the attributes of the services that you provide, of your products. And you're gonna need an understanding of which of those attributes, which of those key performance aspects of your service fall into the bucket of being a satisfier or fall into the bucket of being a dissatisfier. And the reason why you need to know this is because you manage them differently and you work on improving them differently. And again, due to time, I don't have time to dig into this today, but understanding this concept can be honestly just revolutionary for you and not wasting time working on things that won't deliver the ROI that you're seeking from a customer satisfaction perspective, or maybe some key business financial result that you need to achieve for your organization. So with that, I'm going to blow past this. There's an approach in lean, one of the lean management techniques that's referred to as a Gamba Walk. And this term Gamba has to do with being able to kind of see things where the action is happening, where the work is getting done. And I know in today's world with the pandemic, we have to do a lot remotely, but there's still ways of being able to get into the area where the experience is being provided to the customer. So whether that, again, is a contact center environment and we're observing those interactions that are being handled through different channels, whether that's going through the experience of what our digital tools feel like and such, and what a customer experience is there and what we're getting in terms of feedback on and such. There's different ways of being able to get yourself into that main flow of where the CX experience is occurring. And there's significant benefits in doing so, because the main challenge here is that for all the reports and metrics that we have, coming through to your eyes for you to be able to look at, it still cannot tell the whole story. So sometimes a problem is so challenging and so difficult to solve, and we've tried using everything that's available to us, that the piece that we're missing is getting right into the midst of where the work is being carried out and experiencing it ourselves and taking note of where the breakdowns are occurring and getting feedback from the staff that are handling those interactions, because they know best what's working, what's not working. They also have some pretty great ideas of how to solve it. They're also going to tell you about ways that they're working around these challenges. Some of those workarounds are great, and some of them you might not be excited to hear. So it's a great way for you to learn so much more about things that are impacting multiple facets of the business, and also impacting the customer experience as well. So we teach you more how to do this in class, how to do it right, how to get the most out of it. There's this thing called affinity and interrelationship diagrams, which is super useful when you do lack data, and super useful when you're dealing with a complex issue that has multiple factors potentially contributing to the problem at hand. So when you can't just use a simple linear approach, this affinity and interrelationship diagram exercise can help you kind of link and understand how issues influence each other, and ultimately which are greater drivers of the performance challenge that you are faced with. So again, as part of what we teach in our courses, we bring you through one of these exercises so you can learn both the science and the art of doing this effectively. But the goal here is to not waste time working on things that won't help you solve your problem. And this is one of those ways that we can help focus on, again, those issues that are gonna, by solving one thing, I can solve multiple others and get to my key problem, my performance problem that I'm trying to make better. All right, we've got a quantitative tool here. I gave you some qualitative approaches. We've got a quantitative tool here that I'll hit quickly. And that is conducting a regression analysis. In this case, using a scatter plot. There's different forms of regression analysis. And again, we teach you these in our courses and such, but we focus on this one today. A scatter plot is really useful. Another power tool in Lean Six Sigma, really useful for you to understand how two variables, what the relationship is with each other, how they relate to each other, if one is having an influence over the other. So if I'm trying to improve the results of a key metric, I might form a hypothesis of things that I believe are influencing those results, and I can use a scatter plot to kind of test those hypotheses and see if I'm right or wrong there before I launch any actions to try to improve upon that. So in this case, this example on the screen is showing the question at hand was, hey, if I achieve higher levels of issue resolution, will that contribute to higher customer satisfaction results? And in this case, we were able to find a strong correlation, and that yes, improving my issue resolution will lead to higher levels of customer satisfaction. On the next slide, we have another example where we had, if you think about our scenario earlier, we had an organization that had higher than desired escalation rates to their tier 2. One of the hypotheses was, hey, I bet it's the agents that have higher handle times that are generating these higher escalation rates. And if we can just get them to learn how to, do better at reducing that time, we can probably lower our escalation rates as well. So the hypothesis here was high handle times are going to be indicative of getting high escalation as well to tier 2. When we plotted the data for the agent population here, we found that wasn't the case. There was almost no correlation at all, basically no correlation between these two metrics. So then rather than launch an effort into reducing handle times in the hopes that it's going to fix your escalation rates, we can now, before we do anything else, continue to look for other contributing factors and apply the same type of analysis until we find something or some things that have a much stronger influence over my escalation results, and then work on fixing those. So I hope this makes sense today, but Lean Six Sigma can really help you not just define your problem better, but also figure out where to begin searching for what needs to be fixed to get your results improved.
So Rick, obviously, even in just the short time we've had together today, there seems to be so much to learn about Six Sigma. And based on the poll that we had earlier regarding the level of experience people have of our attendees have today, I'm guessing like me that many of them might find this a little intimidating. And, you know, complex math and statistics are not my strong suit, as you know. So where do we begin? What would you suggest?
Another good question. And yes, this can appear very daunting. I mean, we had a lot of numbers on the screen. We have dots and lines on charts. Like, how do you take that? How do you learn this? You know, what's the first step? How do we grow in our competence in these tools while achieving results? Because we don't have time to just learn and not have an impact on the organization. So I've drawn up a bit of a roadmap here, and you're going to be happy to know you've already accomplished step one. All right. So step one, congratulations in this process, was you attending this webinar today. Because you needed this initial excursion into, can this really work? Does this really apply in my industry? Can this really work in a service setting? And we're here to tell you that through years and years of applying this in real CX organizations, it can work, and it can be very powerful at helping you achieve levels of excellence. So that's first step. Congratulations. Second step would be to kind of dip your toe in the water a little further. We've got a one-day course that we've split over 2 days that we call Data Analysis for Contact Centers. And so I'm sure you can find a way to give up half a day time over a couple days there. It's 3.5 to 4 hours each day. We'll take you deeper into actually learning how to use some of these tools. We'll have data that we bring to use that's from real data from the industry. And we'll also ask you to bring your own, because we want you to learn with ours, and then we want you to apply it on your own data as well. So it's a great way to learn the concepts, to apply them same day, so that you leave that 2-day time frame already knowing how to put this to use in your organization and can generate results. Our goal here is to help you achieve real results immediately. We want you to put this to use immediately. So once you've kind of gathered up some steam there from that 1-day course split over 2 days, we'd like you to consider coming to our full week course, our Yellow Belt course that we have in September. And oh, by the way, if these dates don't work for you, I'm hopeful it will for many of you, but if they don't work for you, check out our website. We've got some other options out there as well. But our full course is just gonna introduce many more tools, give you a lot more practice. Every new concept, every new tool we teach, qualitative, quantitative, we put you through real exercises, real scenarios that you would be facing in your environment, and you practice, you get coached on how to learn them, and you come out every day already being able to use these throughout that week. And what we see many students do is at the end of a day of class, they run back, gather more of their own data, and next day they're bringing those examples back to us to kind of talk through in the application of what they learned that same day. So again, it's useful right away, it's adaptable right away, it's implementable right away. We want you to see results right away. So you come out of that class, you start putting all of these deeper concepts to use, and we want you to take some time. Some students get so excited about it, they want to rush into like, when's the Greenbelt class? Well, the best thing to do is to not run and get in the Greenbelt class right away. It's actually to continue using what you've learned out of Yellow Belt. It was quite comprehensive. I'll tell you right now, our Yellow Belt is probably harder than most green belts out there, okay? So we want to be able to help you through that process. I'm sure in your career you've had mentors that have helped you in different aspects of your career, or even in hobbies outside of the business environment. It's always helpful to have a mentor. We want to be that mentor for you. Maybe we get on a call once a week or once every 2 weeks, kind of going through your application of what you've learned in your environment. And when you run into a challenge, a hurdle that you hadn't seen before, we want to be able to coach you through that so that you continue to have success and see real results in your organization. So once you've had 3 or 4 months of applying Yellow Belt, we'd say you're ready. You're ready to go into Green Belt. We teach you more about the tools you already learned. We go deeper with those. And then we teach you some new concepts as well in Lean Six Sigma to kind of broaden your tool set, give you a more complete tool set for all different kinds of scenarios that you may be faced in your business. And we go through the same cycle here again. So you're going to learn stuff you can apply right away in class. And then coming out of class, we're going to be there for you from a mentoring perspective. And a lot of organizations decide at this time that they want to tackle a big, hairy, complex problem that they've had for months or years, and they haven't been able to solve. And we'd love to join you in that, all right? We'd love to partner with you on attacking a major, problem in your organization that you just haven't been able to solve on your own. All of this is a pathway towards getting you to operational excellence. At each step along the way, You're learning the concept and putting it to use, seeing results. Learning the concept, putting it to use, seeing results. And with that said, we've got 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure we get to some of your questions. Thanks for putting up with us today. I hope you found this super useful. James, what do we have in terms of questions?
Okay, so thanks, Rick and Brent. We appreciate it. As I mentioned earlier, we've got about 10 minutes for questions and answers. We've already had a few come into the queue, but please continue to submit those. If you have any others that you'd like us to get to, we'll do our best. And keep in mind that after we get through these questions, we will be sharing a link with you guys so that any of the questions that we don't answer, we'll follow up and make sure we get those back to you. So first one that came in has to do with going back to averages. So I wasn't the only one that struggled with that. Discussion on averages didn't quite make sense to me. If on average my team or product or service is beating the target, how is that not good? Not a good thing. My clients and my leadership certainly seem to be fine with it. Guys?
Brent, you give it a shot, right? I tried a couple times. Let's see.
Yeah, so when you think about the short discussion we had on distributions, right? When we talk about how those processes result in varying results across a population. The fact that we are averaging all of that together, what we're really trying to do when we calculate an average is sort of figure out where the approximate center of the data is, if you will. Just because the center is below the target, depending on how close it is to the target, doesn't necessarily mean that that's what your customers are actually experiencing when they contact you. And it may not mean that that's what all of your customers or even most of your customers are reporting when you get customer satisfaction results. So those averages are intended to give us kind of an approximation of where the center of the data is, but that really doesn't tell us anything at all about how wide the distribution of the results is. And so when your performance results are below target, but they're kind of close to the target, what that really means is a significant percentage of the results are probably actually on the wrong side of the target. And so you need to understand just how much of that is really occurring. It's not enough to just know the average. Knowing the average gives you kind of a general indication, but you need more details in order to understand what's really going on.
Great. Thanks, Brent. Okay, we've got a few more here and we've only got a few minutes. So depending on the size of the organization, how many people would you suggest I have trained on Lean Six Sigma? How many people or processes can a yellow belt, green belt, or black belt support?
Oof. That's a tough one, because it depends on the kind of size of the challenges and such. So you don't. Well, first of all, we would say some organizations only train their, I'm going to say, their analytical people in Lean Six Sigma. We would say that's a mistake. Right. The most successful organizations that we've seen actually train not just the analysts but their leaders. So the people that are accountable for the results, that have to interpret those results and have to take action based on those results, are the ones that really need to know how to interpret, how to analyze, how to use data that's being shared and presented to them, how to challenge some of the data that's being presented to them to make sure that they're making well-founded decisions. So I don't know if I have a good percentage or so, but I would say make sure that in your organization, based on your size, that you have a good mix of both leaders and I'm going to say independent contributors like analyst type people that are doing this. And what you don't want to happen is every time you are faced with a challenge, that the way we fix it is we go talk. If Brent is my one trained person on Lean Six Sigma, I go, I have a problem. I'm going to go talk to Brent because Brent only has so much bandwidth, right? You're one person that was trained on this only has so much bandwidth. That means a lot of things are not being done the way they should be done. A lot of analysis, a lot of interpretations are not being done with the right kind of thinking or guidance. And we want you to apply this thinking in your day-to-day. So the more leaders, and analysts that you can have trained on it, the more they can apply it on a day-to-day basis and not be bottlenecked by one or two resources that are the expert here. I hope that helps some.
I might go one step further than that, Rick. Yeah, I think it's absolutely essential that your leadership actually understands sort of how to consume the data, if you will, how to turn data into actionable information. Typically, you put that in the hands of the analyst, but you want your leadership to actually understand the process and know what they're looking at and be able to understand, you know, the reports that are being generated or the hypotheses that the analysts might be coming up with. And of course, it's obviously important for your data analysts to really understand that and understand what tools to apply and when. But I would also say that your analysts are not going to be the only independent contributors to these projects. And so I think it's really important to have some operational people who have an understanding. And maybe they don't need to go through the full series of training. They don't need to necessarily get a green belt or you know, go even further and try to become a black belt. But they do need to have some basic foundational understanding of the performance improvement process and sort of the tools that we're using. Because as you said earlier, it's really important to get feedback from people who actually use the processes. So I would say, yeah, your leadership, some people in your leadership absolutely have to go through this training. You want your data analysts to be able to go through this training, but you also want some operational people to have been through the training so that they can contribute, not just from the basis of their expertise in the operations itself, but understanding how that connects up to the type of diagnostic tools that we would expect to use to try to understand what's going wrong in the processes.
Good point. Thank you, Brent.
Great. Okay, we just got about 4 minutes to go, so I'm going to try to give you one that I think you can get to quickly. The question here is around that proposed pathway, the little roadway that you showed us a moment ago, Rick, on how to get Lean Six Sigma and operational excellence. Person's question is, the proposed pathway is too long. I don't have the patience for that, and my leadership team expects quick, if not immediate, results. How do I get results faster?
I'd actually, so great question. And the pathway is over a period of time, right? It's not an overnight thing, but what is an overnight thing is each step, right? So if you can get to just the first class, the data analysis for contact center class, and invest 2.5 days of your time, you're already going to learn things that will generate results immediately. That's what we teach. That's how we teach. I mean, when you think back to our chairman's quote at the beginning of this presentation, this is all we're about. All we're about is helping you get results that are meaningful to your business, or we wouldn't be in front of you. So yes, if you need a faster path, just take the first course, take the 1-day course, and you will begin to be able to apply it immediately and see results immediately. So that's the shortcut.